looking everywhere, that's how the story goes.
Welcome to the Zombie Story Zone, where nightmares wear cowboy boots and romance doesn't end with death. It begins there. In the year 1883, the sun scorches over Rosetta Creek, a remote desert town ruled not by sheriffs or cowboys, but by women. Strong, bold, and beautiful women. From the glamorous saloon queen Delilah Rose to the fearless bounty hunter Joe Blackwood, the town thrived under their fire and elegance. But something ancient has awakened beneath the desert, a cursed mind, a preacher long thought dead, and a horror that can't be killed. The dead walk. The women fight back. And love, lust, and loyalty are all tested in blood. This isn't just another zombie shootout. Deadwood Roses is a tale of female power, burning romance, suspenseful survival, and one shocking twist that will leave you breathless. If you crave beautiful women with guns, undead horror, and a storyline that blends elegance with terror, you're in the right place. Subscribe to the Zombie Story Zone now and hit the bell, because Rosetta Creek is about to burn, and you won't want to miss a second.
Fight or flight will unite as the horror unfolds in the Zombie Story Zone. Adventure never grows old.
In the heart of Arizona territory, where the land was dry and the skies endless, stood a dusty, elegant town called Rosetta Creek, ruled not by gunslingers or gold barons, but by women. The beating heart of Rosetta was the Velvet Spur, a luxurious saloon with velvet drapes, golden chandeliers, and a grand piano that sang each night. It was owned and commanded by Miss Delilah Rose, a vision in emerald silk with eyes sharp as a desert hawk. Her beauty was legendary, but it was her wit and will that truly ran the town. Delilah didn't just serve drinks. She served order, grace, and ambition. Men respected her. Women followed her. She walked through her saloon like a queen in her court, her heels tapping over polished wood as she gave silent signals to her girls, and no one dared disobey. Tonight, the saloon shimmered with music and warmth. Marshal Elias Quinn, a handsome stranger with a dusty coat and curious eyes, sat at the bar. Delilah approached, her perfume rich with roses and whiskey. "You looking for justice, Marshal?" she asked with a teasing smile. "Maybe," he said, "but I'd settle for a dance with the queen of this town." They danced slowly under the lamplight, the saloon fading into soft music and fluttering laughter. Outside, the desert wind picked up, carrying something ancient in its breath. The next morning, the town stirred to life with sunshine and sweat. Clara Bell, the blacksmith's daughter, stood in her leather apron, her hands wrapped around glowing iron. Her forge crackled as she shaped horseshoes and hatchets, her muscles glistening beneath the morning sun. She was tough, loyal, and the kind of woman who didn't flinch at fire. When Judge Joe Blackwood, the town's half-Cherokee bounty hunter, rode in on her chestnut mare, Clara's eyes lit up. Joe dismounted with her usual swagger and tossed a bag of coins onto Clara's work table. "For bullets," Joe said, eyes flashing, "and maybe a kiss." Clara pulled her into the shade of the stable and pressed her lips to hers. Their romance was quiet but fierce, hidden behind walls, yet stronger than steel. Meanwhile, Dr. Miriam Hawthorne adjusted her bonnet and stepped into her clinic. She moved gracefully through the narrow rooms, tending to workers burned at the mine or bitten by snakes. Her mind was sharp, her words few, but her presence reassured all who entered. That afternoon, Miss Violet played the piano at the Velvet Spur, dressed in sky blue satin. Her melodies lifted the room, but her eyes stayed near the windows, watching the sun dip low and the wind stir again. Something felt off. Not danger exactly, but a stirring in the earth. By sundown, a storm brewed over the hills, painting the sky with strange colors, amber and gray. A man stumbled into town from the desert. His clothes were torn, skin pale, and his eyes blank. He didn't speak, just moaned softly, clutching his side as if chased by something unseen. Sheriff O'Connor brought him in and locked him in a cell, while Dr. Miriam tended to him. His pulse was weak, skin cold, no fever, no wounds. "Delirium?" Miriam muttered, "or something else." That night, the Velvet Spur hosted a starlight ball. The saloon sparkled with lanterns. Women twirled in lace and silk. Men in dusters and waistcoats drank champagne. Delilah, wrapped in crimson velvet, danced with Marshal Quinn under the glow of the moon. Their laughter mingled with music, soft and slow. Joe and Clara shared a drink near the piano, brushing hands, brushing hearts. Then came a scream. Sheriff O'Connor, pale and shaken, burst through the doors. The prisoner? He's gone. Gone? Delilah's brow furrowed. Did he escape? No, he whispered. He changed. Outside, dog howls echoed from the canyon, and beneath the soil, something ancient began to stir. Sheriff O'Connor locked the jailhouse doors behind him, sweat dripping from his brow. The prisoner had vanished without a trace. No signs of struggle, no broken locks. But something else remained. Blood. Not a lot, just a few streaks smeared on the floor, and footprints, barefoot, leading out into the night. Delilah Rose stood silently near the cell door, her crimson dress rippling in the breeze. She bent down and ran a gloved hand over the sticky trail. He wasn't just sick, she said softly. He was changing. Inside the Velvet Spur, the night resumed in uneasy silence. Miss Violet resumed her piano playing, but the mood had shifted. Something lingered, like the last notes of a funeral hymn. In a private upstairs lounge, Delilah met with her most trusted women. Clara Bell, her corset dusty from the forge, arms folded but eyes soft. Joe Blackwood, rifle leaning near the wall, her hand resting casually on Clara's thigh. Hair pinned tight, brows furrowed in thought. Delilah lit a cigarette and leaned forward. I want someone watching the mine. Something's wrong out there. That's when the door swung open, and in walked Esme Navarro. Esme, the new girl at the saloon, had recently arrived from Santa Fe. Tall, olive-skinned, with long black curls and smoldering brown eyes, she moved like a dancer. Her red silk gown clung to her like a second skin, and when she entered a room, every head turned. I saw something, Esme said breathlessly. A man in the alley, just standing there. No breathing, no blinking. And then, Delilah asked, he walked into the dark, like it called him. The room went quiet. Outside, thunder rolled low across the desert. The next morning, Rosetta Creek stirred with caution now as the townsfolk whispered about the sick stranger and strange footprints. But life in the Wild West never stopped. Horses needed shoes, crops needed water, and whiskey still flowed. At the Velvet Spur, preparations began for the Desert Bloom Festival, a yearly celebration of life, love, and beauty. The saloon girls decorated the balcony with crimson drapes and dried wildflowers. Violet played waltzes on the piano as Esme twirled through the room in a silk sapphire gown, rehearsing her dance for the festival's opening night. Delilah stood upstairs on her balcony, looking out over her town. The desert wind lifted her hair. Marshal Quinn stepped beside her, his coat billowing. People are scared, he said. They should be, she replied. But I won't let Rosetta fall. He turned to her. You're not like any woman I've ever known. Delilah raised a brow. Is that a compliment, Marshal? No, he said with a smirk. It's a warning. You're dangerous to a man's heart. They kissed then, slow with the weight of fear behind it. Not lust, longing. That evening, another woman arrived in Rosetta Creek. She rode in on a pale horse, her blonde hair braided with turquoise beads. Her name was Sable Wynn, a bounty hunter known from San Francisco to Laredo. She wore black leather with silver buttons, a twin pistol holster, and boots that hadn't known rest in weeks. Sable dismounted at the saloon and locked eyes with Joe. Well, Sable smirked, this town just got interesting. Joe tensed, Clara watching her closely. There was history between them, old heat, old hurt. As the sun set, music filled the saloon, but outside, the desert shadows moved in unnatural ways. And far out past the mine, something crawled to the surface. The Desert Bloom Festival began at sundown. Lanterns lit the streets in gold. Women twirled in layered gowns, their hair pinned high with desert roses. The men wore clean boots and black vests, their mustaches waxed, their hands eager. At the center of it all, Esme Navarro performed on stage, her silk gown catching every spark of light, her hips swaying like wildfire. Her dark eyes flickered toward the audience, locking briefly on Violet, then Sable, then Delilah. It was no secret. Esme was loved by many and desired by more. Clara, now dressed in a low-cut blouse under her leather vest, shared a quiet drink with Joe near the stage. Joe was distracted. Her eyes kept drifting to Sable, who leaned against the wall, arms folded, watching her with that familiar fire. Delilah and Marshal Quinn danced once again, but there was tension in their movements. Quinn had ridden to the mine earlier that day. He hadn't said much about what he saw. Something's buried there, he whispered into Delilah's ear. Something alive. Suddenly, the music stopped. A miner burst into the festival square, covered in dirt and shaking. "They're walking!" he gasped. "In the mine! Dead men, walking!" The crowd fell silent. Delilah stepped forward, her voice cutting through the panic. "Everyone inside, now!" And though no one saw it in the moment, Miriam looked down at her notebook where she had drawn something earlier that day during her patient exam. A strange black vein twisting beneath the skin like roots. The sketch was now smeared. But the ink was moving. The festival ended in silence. The miners' warning about the walking dead had left the town shaken, but no one wanted to believe it. People locked their doors, said extra prayers, and tried to carry on. But fear doesn't fade that easily in the desert. That night, Delilah called a private meeting in her upstairs room. Around the mahogany table sat her circle. Clara Bell, arms crossed, jaw set. Joe Blackwood, cleaning her rifle with restless fingers. Miriam, pale and thoughtful. Sable Wynn, lounging with cool detachment. Violet, her gloved hands trembling just slightly. Watching everything with sharp, unreadable eyes. "We don't know what we're dealing with yet," Delilah said, her eyes fierce. "But we'll find out. We'll fight if we have to." Joe looked up. "I say we go to the mine." Miriam nodded. "I'll ride with you. Whatever this is, it's spreading. One of my patients died today, but their body never cooled. No rigor. It was like they were waiting." Silence. Then Sable smirked. "Well, I do love a good ghost story." At dawn, Delilah, Joe, Miriam, and Sable rode to the mine. What they found stopped them cold. Boot prints, not one set, dozens. The mine shaft was open and the rocks were scorched black. Miriam stepped closer and touched the wall. "Feel that?" she whispered. "The heat, it's like the mine is breathing." Then, from within the darkness, a voice echoed, broken and slow. "Shh!" They turned. Something moved. They ran. Rosetta Creek tried to pretend it was just an illusion. The mayor urged calm. The preacher offered blessings. The men gathered their rifles. But it was the women who took charge. Delilah turned the saloon into a command post. Clara began welding steel reinforcements for windows and doors. Violet organized supplies and food. Esme taught the other girls how to use knives. Sable set up a lookout point near the church steeple. At night, Joe and Miriam sat under the stars, their hands brushing as they talked about life before Rosetta. "You ever think of leaving?" Joe asked. Miriam nodded. "Every day. Until now. Now I only think of surviving." They kissed softly beneath the moon. Then the first scream came, a rancher's wife, bitten while checking the barn. Her husband carried her into Miriam's clinic, begging for help, but her skin had already turned gray. Within an hour, she died. But she didn't stay dead. She sat up, eyes blank and cloudy, and when the man leaned over her, she bit into his throat. Joe shot her before she could get up again. Word spread. This time, no one doubted. That night, the wind howled. Everyone in Rosetta Creek stayed inside. Doors were barred, lanterns dimmed. Only Delilah stood on the balcony of the Velvet Spur, staring out into the darkness. She wore black satin, her hair braided in a crown, her pistol strapped to her thigh. "Do you feel it?" she whispered to the night. "The stillness?" She turned to Esme, who had quietly joined her. Esme nodded. "It's the kind of quiet right before something awful." Moments later, the church bell rang. 3 slow tolls. The signal. Joe burst into the saloon. "They're here, North Edge, coming from the ridge." The women sprang into action. Sable climbed the church tower with her rifle. Clara and Violet helped usher people into safety behind the saloon's fortified walls. Delilah and Joe took the front gate. From the shadows, figures emerged, slow, dragging feet, arms outstretched. Dust clung to their clothing. Some wore miner's gear, others nothing at all. Their eyes glowed faint green. They didn't moan, they didn't scream. They just came forward, silent and hungry. Delilah whispered, "Aim for the head." The first shot echoed through the canyon. Night fell like a blade over Rosetta Creek. The town's defenders, led by Delilah Rose, stood behind barricades of barrels, broken wagons, and oil-soaked cloth. The fire line crackled at the edge of town, a desperate attempt to ward off what was coming. But fire didn't stop the dead. They came limping out of the darkness, silent, glowing-eyed figures with gray skin and twisted limbs. Some were dressed in familiar clothes, others wore miners' uniforms, and some had no faces left to remember. Delilah stood on the front porch of the Velvet Spur, black velvet gown fluttering in the wind, revolver steady in her hand. "Wait for it," she whispered. Then Joe fired the first shot. The line erupted in flame. The zombies didn't stop. Gunfire echoed. Clara swung her iron-forged axe covered in sweat and soot. Joe sniped from the rooftops. Miriam pulled the injured into the clinic. Esme fought like a dancer, blades flashing. Violet played loud, frantic piano music to distract the terrified townsfolk inside. But they were losing ground. A young boy turned in the middle of the chaos. Bitten. His mother screamed. Sable shot them both. Mercy, she muttered. Smoke choked the air. The fire line failed. Fall back, Delilah ordered, her voice fierce. Everyone to the clinic. As they ran, Violet was grabbed by one of the risen. Esme tackled it, plunging a blade into its throat, her gown soaked in blood. Clara helped Violet up. In the chaos, Delilah looked around. So many faces she had once protected, now terrified. She stared out into the dark as more figures emerged. Too many. Something had to change. Something had to end. They didn't sleep that night. Instead, Delilah gathered her circle, Joe, Clara, Esme, Sable, Miriam, and Violet, in the shattered remains of the saloon. The town's lost, she said calmly. But if we take out the source, we can stop it from spreading. We go to the mine, Joe said. Finish this. They rode at dawn, tired but determined. Their faces were bruised, their dresses torn, but their eyes were fire. The mine waited like a gaping wound in the desert. The air grew colder the deeper they went. The walls pulsed with veins of blackened root. Miriam touched one. It throbbed like a living thing. I think this is part of them, she whispered. In the lowest chamber they found it. A glowing green crystal embedded in tangled vines, and beside it, Father Elric, his flesh gray, robes tattered, lips smiling with something unnatural. You dare challenge death? He said, eyes bright with madness. The earth reclaims its children. Delilah stepped forward, no fear in her voice. I'm not your child. I'm your end. She shot him through the heart. He didn't fall. Sable tackled him, knives flashing. Joe pinned him. Miriam raised her lantern. Smash the crystal, Delilah shouted. Miriam struck it with her scalpel handle. A crack formed. Then a scream. A deep, unnatural howl filled the mine. The root system jerked violently. The walls began to collapse. Go, Delilah screamed. The others ran, but Delilah stayed behind, pulling out a stick of dynamite from her garter belt. She kissed the match, lit the fuse, and whispered, This is for Rosetta. The mine exploded in a flash of green fire. The shockwave knocked the women off their horses. Joe turned back, screaming Delilah's name, but nothing was left but a collapsing ridge and a cloud of dust. Rosetta Creek stood silent. No more walking dead. No more green light. The roots beneath the clinic withered. The strange fever vanished. They buried Delilah atop a red cliff overlooking the town. A crown of roses sat on her grave. Clara hammered a cross from iron. Violet played a song that made even Sable's stone heart crack. Days passed, then weeks. Joe and Clara reopened the blacksmith shop. Miriam stayed to rebuild the clinic and start a women's hospital. Violet turned the Velvet Spur into a school for girls. Esme danced again. Sable disappeared at dawn, leaving behind her coat and a single note. She didn't die. She chose to become something more. Far across the desert, in a cave lined with black roots and green light, Delilah Rose opened her eyes. Her skin flawless, her eyes glowing. She stood tall, beautiful and inhuman now, but still her. A voice whispered from the shadows, Welcome back, my queen. She smiled. Let's begin again. And so Rosetta Creek was saved, but not without sacrifice. The dead were stopped, the mine destroyed, and the women of the town stood taller than ever. Scarred but unbroken, heroes were born, love was tested, legends were written, but while the town healed far beyond the desert winds, something stirred. Delilah Rose, the queen who gave her life to save her people, had risen, more powerful, more mysterious, and no longer entirely human. Is she a savior reborn or the start of a darker age? What comes next may not be salvation. It may be a new reign, a reign of roses and ruin. If you love the romance, suspense, and horror of Deadwood Roses, hit that like button, comment your favorite character, and subscribe for more thrilling tales from the Zombie Story Zone. Because the dead never truly sleep, and queens never fall without rising again. Stay tuned for the next chapter, Deadwood Reign, coming soon.
Stories on will survive the night. Will survive the night. From the graveyards to the streets, hear the whispers low. Every story's a thrill, come and let your courage show. Fight or flight will unite as the horror